My father spent 14 years locked inside the thick steel doors of the Barry Telford State Penitentiary, located right outside Texarkana, Texas. Recently, I took an interest in the darker events that have happened to various family members, and sat down to ask him if he had any chilling stories or experiences he could share about his time he spent incarcerated. Anything that he hadn't shared with me before. I was both pleased and horrified, as for the next 2 hours, he divulged some truly chilling and grotesque tales. I'll just let you know now that some of these stories are graphic, and if you have a weak stomach, I'd advise you not to read further. For the rest of you, I won't spare the details, and I'll lay them out exactly as he told them to me. My dad was sent to the Telford unit a few months after his 21st birthday, sentenced to 20 years for armed robbery. It is a maximum security prison, designed to mostly hold suspected gang members and violent criminals. The first day is a total shock to your system. You're stripped and cavity searched coming in and out of every room. You have a bedtime. You are timed at meals and thrown into a cell with 3 other inmates, telling you the house rules and which bunk is yours. Then, laying in bed that first night, that's when it hits you that this is home. That this is your life now. Out of anything I can recall, that feeling of helplessness and hopelessness, that loss of freedom, that is the scariest part of prison. He told me that as the months passed, you get used to your routine. You start to need the structure, even crave it. He said he decided to make the best of it, learn as many skills as he could, and stay as busy as possible. One of his vocational skills that he picked up was plumbing, and soon became the in-house plumber for A building. Now, the way the prison is set up is that there is an A building and a B building. Inside each building, there are 10 cell houses. Each cell house contains 12 cells that can hold anywhere from 1 to 4 inmates each. In the middle of each cell house is the rec room, where the cells all open up to, and this is where the inmates spend most of their free time. In addition to the cell houses, each building also contains several solitary wings, labeled from A seg to Z seg. When I first got there, everyone kept joking that if I stepped out of line, the guards would send me to M seg. One day, I asked a buddy who had been locked up for 15 years already when I got there why people kept talking about M seg and not any of the other seg wings. Look, his buddy told him, people who have extended stays in M just don't come back the same. Some don't come back at all. The guards know it. That's why they always fill M last. Or they put new guys there who think they might be troublemakers. One night in M and you'll straighten your act up real quick. I've never been there myself, but I talked to a couple of inmates who have, and they both told me the same thing. Something evil lives in that place. So, like I said, my dad had become the on-call plumber for A building. He said it was about 6 months into the job when he had his first encounter with MSEG. Whenever a toilet was stopped up or something was leaking, the guards would just knock on my door and lead me to the problem. It was an around-the-clock type of thing. I didn't mind, though. Any excuse to get out of the cell was fine by me. Plus, you get your own cell, since you'd be coming in and out at all hours of the day and night, so that was a nice perk as well. Anyway, one night there's a knock on my door, and the guard tells me to get dressed, Rochelle. We need you in Seg. I get up, the guard opens my door, and we start heading down to Seg. It's a real mess down there. I've seen a lot of shit in my day, but this is crazy, the guard told my dad as he led him down the connecting corridors. Just make sure you wear your gloves and booties, Rochelle. My dad was curious and asked the guard what happened. "Looney Tune on suicide watch. I guess somehow he must have snuck in a piece of metal. Anyway, I shouldn't tell you this, but I don't want you to be surprised when you get in there. Crazy here cut off his own genitals. He threw his testicles out onto the run, but we can't find his penis, and that is where you come in." When they reached their destination, there was another guard standing outside with an inmate holding a mop, waiting to clean up after my dad was finished. My dad said when they opened the door to MSEG, it was almost hauntingly dark. 4 or 5 dim overhead lights ran down the hallway, but seemed to act more like spotlights and gave off practically no ambient light. He said there was a trail of blood leading towards the back of the corridor. Each seg block has 14 cells with solid steel doors. Each door had a small window that could be opened and closed from the outside, and a tray slit, which the guy must have used to toss his testicles out. As he got closer, he could see that blood was running out from a cell towards the end of the block through a small gap under the door. "Open 13, the guard yelled to another guard behind a glass window controlling the electronic locks. When I went into that cell, I couldn't believe how much blood there was. It was on the walls and the ceiling. The entire mattress pad was doused in it. The toilet was flooded up to the brim, and it looked like it was filled with blood. I used a cup to transfer the bloody water into the buckets until I could start to see the silhouette of something under the water. I could see a big wad of toilet paper, so I pulled it out and sat it on the floor. I could tell something was inside it. As I started to slowly unravel the wad, all of a sudden I started hearing this noise coming from the air vents. Dunk, dunk, dunk. It sounded like someone crawling or trying to sneak through them almost. I didn't think much of it at the time, but I'll get back to that later. Anyway, I unrolled the paper, and sure enough, the guy's pecker is right there. The guard took it and dropped it in a bag of ice, and after making sure the toilet flushed, he started leading my dad back to the entrance of MSEG. When we got down the hall, waiting for the exit door to open, all the lights went out. "Shit," muttered the guard. "Against the wall, inmate." I stood against the wall, my dad continued, and as the guards tried to figure out what was going on, I heard that noise in the vents again. It was coming from the cell I had just come out of. Tunk, tunk, tunk. I didn't know what it was, but it gave me this awful feeling. And as I was standing there, I realized that it was getting louder and faster and closer to me. Tunk, 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 tunk. It sounded like whatever was in that vent was now in a dead sprint right at us. The guard was trying to ignore it, but I could tell he heard it too, because he kept looking back over his shoulder and started yelling at the guard behind the glass. "Hey! Hey! Tunk, tunk, tunk! Hurry up and get this fucking door open! Tunk, tunk, tunk!" Just as the noise in the vent got up to us, the lights came back on, and it was silent. The door opened up, and the guard got us out of there as fast as he could. A few days later, I saw the inmate who was waiting on janitor duty that night and asked him if he'd seen anything. He told me he saw them wheel a guy covered in blood out on a stretcher and that he was screaming about a man in the vents and that the man had told him to do it. My dad also asked him if he heard anything in the vents while he was mopping up, but he told my dad he didn't hear anything, but that he found the metal the man from 13 had used to cut himself. It was buried in a pool of blood, the guy said. Damnedest thing, too. It looked like a piece of shrapnel cut out from air duct metal.